passing through a great journey, a journey of this Lent. The subject, fasting and feasting, is very much relevant to this season. Since this is the first focus faith seminar of this year, the subject finds relevant. I think when Joe and Vinci and Jimmy told me to do this lecture, they gave me a subject of fasting and feasting. So when I hear this fasting and feasting, I just remember a novel by Anita Desai. She's an Indian girl, I think born and brought up here in America. She wrote a novel about fasting and feasting. That novel is about an Indian family. An Indian family who's they spent half of their life in India and the rest of their life in America. So a father, a mother, and 3 kids, 2 daughters and 1 son. So the elder, they are living in a village, a kind of a small town. So the first part of that novel is telling about life in India. And the second part is telling the life in America. So I'm not going detail into that novel or that story. The first part, that's a kind of fasting life. A fasting kind of life. Very strict life. The father is very strict with the kids. And the mother is obeying the father, her husband, in all aspects. There's a kind of fasting life. Then their son, he's the youngest son, he got admission in one of the universities of America, and he came to America and he's doing some courses in America. So he enjoyed the life in America because he's coming from a fasting life and he's spending in America and he's leading a feasting life. That's why fasting and feasting, she gave that name. So Indian life is a fasting life and American life is a feasting life for that family. So finally, Anita Desai is telling that both of that families, both life is they are unhappy with the both part of that life. They are unhappy with the fasting life. They are unhappy with the feasting life in America. So I think this fasting and feasting, when I'm thinking with that novel, I think why our church fathers connected this fasting with feasting. So all our fasts are connected with the feast. So when fasting is staying alone, that's a kind of unhappiness. When we connect fasting and feasting, there we find a blessing and there we can find a happiness in our life. So leading a life that is strictly fasting life without any feast, that's a kind of boring and a kind of unhappiness. So this subject, fasting and feasting, is very relevant to our spiritual life. See, in this lecture, I'm going to deal with the fasting, mainly fasting, in 3 sections. The first section is, I'm going to give you some overviews of fasting, some general information about fasting, how the communities and how the religions they fast, and part, I'm going to deal with the Orthodox concept of fasting, and third part, I'm going to deal with some of the misconceptions and some of the questions that raised against the fasting. So, fasting, as we see the terminology of fasting, some of the classical languages, the root word of this fasting, I'm taking some of the classical languages, the root word of, as you take the root word of fasting, in Greek, the word is nestia. Nestia means, the meaning is not to eat. Nestia, not to eat. In Hebrew, the word for fasting is so. So means that it has two meanings. The first meaning is withholding natural food from the body, and the second meaning is penitential offerings. That's a modern Hebrew word, that is ta'anit. That means the penitential offering. The Syriac word for this fasting is saoma. That means to abstain. To abstain. The Sanskrit word for this fasting is, I think you don't know, you know what is the Sanskrit word for this fasting? Don't know. It's a kind of Malayalam word. It's upavasa. You know that. It's upavasa. Upavasa means, upa means near, vasa means to stay. Stay near. That is upavasa. That's a kind of, I think that's a good word. If we are seeing, when we are seeing in its spiritual aspects of this fasting, that word, that Sanskrit word is very meaningful. That is upavasa. That is staying near God. That's upavasa. So the secular definition, as we are giving, if you are going to give a secular definition to this fasting, I think fasting is a choice to abstain from food at certain lines in order to put our attention on something more important to us than ourselves or our sensory appetite. That's a kind of secular definition we can give. That's a kind of abstinence from food. That's the thing. When if you are going to give a religious definition, fasting is a religious act, increases our sensitivity to that mystery, always and everywhere present to us. Fasting is an invitation to awareness. It's a call to compassion for the needy, a cry for distress, a song of joy. Fasting is a discipline of self-restraint, a ritual of purification, and an offering of atonement. Fasting is a wellspring for the spiritually dry, a compass for the spiritually lost, and inner nourishment for the spiritually hungry. So when we look at these religious aspects of fasting, all these kinds of definitions are suited for the religious fasting. So what does the fast mean for major religions of this world? Almost all the religions of this world observe this fasting. So what does it mean for these religions? For Judaism, fasting means it is purification, mourning, and atonement. For Jewish religions, fasting means it is purification, mourning, and atonement. For Islam, the meaning of fasting for them is the Allah consciousness. Allah means their God. The God consciousness, to achieve their God consciousness, then self-restraints or self-control, and social charity. This is for Islam, fast means, this is meant for Islam. For Hinduism, they fast for purity, respect, and penance. Their fasting is meant for purity, respect, and penance. For Buddhism, they fast for the purity of the body, the clarity of the mind, and for moderation. They fast for these reasons. And we know, apart from this, I think Sikh religion, they don't encourage fasting. Apart from that, we have the rational fasting. That is the fastings of the secular society. They fast purely for their health effects. For Christianity, what does it mean for Christianity? Fasting means, what does it mean for Christianity? I'll take a church by church. We all know in Christianity we have three major divisions. They are the Catholic, the Protestants, and the Orthodox. There are the three major sections or the divisions of Christianity. For Roman Catholic Church, they observe strict fasting up to the Second Vatican Council. After Second Vatican Council, they give some moderation to the act of fasting. For them, the reduction of one's own food to one meal a day, with or without abstinence, is fasting. So the reduction of one's own food to one meal a day, 1 meal per day, with or without abstinence. For them, the fasting and abstinence is different. For them, the abstinence means they abstain from meat. They can or they cannot. Or if they want to abstain from meat, they can. But for Fridays, they advocate to abstain from meat. The main purpose for the Roman Catholic Church, the fasting is the spiritual focus, self-discipline, imitation of Christ, and performing penance. That is for both personal and corporate, a church as a whole. So there is spiritual focus, self-discipline, imitation of Christ, and performing penance. But in the US, they give some more moderation. In the US, the Roman Catholic Church, they fast only on Ash Wednesday and Good Friday. So they just give so much moderation to the fasting in US. But the Eastern Catholics, there's an Eastern rite for Catholics, they follow the discipline of their own churches. We know the Catholic Church, they have Eastern rites. Almost all the Eastern churches, there is a section under the hierarchy of Pope. But that churches in India, we know is a Malankara Catholic Church. That's a rite of Roman Catholic Church. They follow their own rules for this fasting. So this is about the Roman Catholic Church. So after Second Vatican Council, they give some moderation to the fasting. After that, they observe the fasting in a very strict manner. For the Protestant Christians, the Lutheran Church strongly encourages fasting, but they are encouraging the faithful to observe fasting, but they are not put forward some strict rules about that. For Reformed churches, for other Reformed churches, at the beginning they criticized this act, the fasting as an act, external act, but nowadays they are encouraging fasting. But the main purpose behind the observance of fast for the Protestant Christians is the personal spiritual experience. The Pentecostal Christians, individuals take short and extended fast. The individual take for their own fast, they can set their own rules and they can fast whatever they want or what else they want. As a church, they don't have a set of rules for the Pentecostal churches. For the charismatic groups, they take fasting very seriously. Their purpose is the intimacy with God. So, in order to get an intimacy with God, they fast. So, Catholic, we just seen what it meant fasting for Catholics, what it meant for Protestants. For what does it mean fasting for the Orthodox Church. We all know Orthodox Church, we are having two families. You know what are the two families of Orthodox Church? What are the two families? We have two Orthodox families. One large family and one small family.
Eastern and Oriental.
Yeah, Eastern and Oriental. Eastern Orthodox Church and Oriental Orthodox Church. Oriental Orthodox Church, we're having 6 churches. The Indian Orthodox Church or the Malankara Orthodox Church is a part of Oriental Orthodox Church. Eastern Orthodox Church, we all know, there's a big community. Here the Greek Orthodox Church, the Russian Orthodox Church, Serbian, then Yugoslavian, Romanian, all comes under the Eastern Orthodox Church. So the Eastern Orthodox Church, they have a strict observance of this fast. They are following the tradition of the church fathers in this case of fasting. They are observing a strict fasting from the early time. They are still maintaining that strict fast. For the Eastern Orthodox Church and Oriental Orthodox Church, almost same. Their observance is almost same, but little difference. But the essence is one. The Eastern Orthodox Church, they observe weekly fast of Wednesday and Friday, as we did. We do. We are also observing the weekly fast as Wednesdays and Friday. So they avoid in the fast at the time of the fast. They avoid meat, fish, eggs, dairy products, olive oil, wine, and alcohol. Such products they avoid that things. Then they have the communion fast. We are also having the communion fast. Let's say when we are having the Sunday Kurbana, we will fast from the previous day or the midnight to that day, the Sunday. Just like that, they are having the fast. Then they have 4 major fast period or Lenten periods. There's a Great Lent. Then they're having the Apostle fast. Then they're having the Dormition fast and Nativity fast. So in our church, how many fasts we have? So we are having 5 fasts, and almost the same. The Great Lent, then the Great Fast, and the Apostle Lent, then the Dormition Lent or the Lent associated with the Assumption of Saint Mary, then the Nativity fast, and we are having one more small fast, that is Nineveh fast, but the Greek Orthodox Church doesn't promote the Nineveh fast. But for the Greek Orthodox Church or the Eastern Orthodox Church, their Lenten period is much bigger than us, or its days are more than our church. So they're having they fast a week before the Lent. They observe fast a week before this Great Lent. Then they're having the 40 days of Lent, and after that the Holy Week. So they have little bit fasting days than us. So that's the case. The Apostle fast and all other fasts they will observe just like us. The Nativity fast, they have 40 days. You know what is Nativity fast? The fast associated with the birth of Jesus Christ. So we are having 25 days. They are having the 40 days of fast. So they have some small other fasts, just like at the Theophany, the eve of Theophany, they will fast. Then the exaltation of the cross, they will fast. Then behead of John the Baptist, they will fast. So they have some other fasts. So for Oriental Orthodox churches, I told earlier that we are the Oriental Orthodox family, we are having 6 churches. So the Oriental Orthodox family, they observe the 5 Lenten seasons. So they, apart from that, they will observe the weekly fast, then the communion fast, and the fast associated with certain feast of individual churches. So, for the Syrian churches, we are under the Syrian family or Syrian churches. The Syrian churches, the fasting has 3 degrees according to the Bar Hebrews, who lived in 1286, is one of our church father who codified our canon of Syrian church. That book described about the fasting and all the spiritual laws of the church practices. So this Bar Hebrews, according to him, the fasting has 3 degrees. The first is a general fasting. General fasting means refraining from food. That's just refraining from food, abstaining from food. That's a general fast. So another degree is a special fast. The special fast is the abstaining from food and indulgence of the senses. Then, and another degree is an exclusive fast, refraining from food, from senses, and from the evil thoughts of the mind. So, he just classified this fast, but we don't want a classification for the fast in the broader sense. So this is a general view, then an overview of fasting. So we just go through the fasting in what does it mean fasting for the major religions of this world, and for the Christian church as a whole, what does it mean as fasting? So I'm going to the content of the main content of today's lecture, that is fasting in Orthodox Church. What is the Orthodox view of fasting? So I just put forward 5 points under this section, fasting in Orthodox Christian view. For us, the Orthodox Christian, fasting is a divine institution. This is the first things as we come across, or as we are going deep into fasting, to learn about fasting, we should fix this in mind. This is a divine institution, just like other divine institutions. As we are talking about marriage, it's a divine institution. It's instituted by God. So when we talk about Eucharist, that's a divine institution. When we talk about baptism, that's a divine institution. So just like baptism, marriage, or Eucharist, fasting is a divine institution. What does it mean, divine institution? Divine institution means God commanded us to do that. It's by God's commandment that thing came into existence. Fasting is not often something we want to do, but it is most certainly something that we are commanded to do. We are commanded to do the fasting. If you have Bibles, just turn to Genesis chapter 2, 16 and 17. Genesis chapter 2, verses 16 and 17. The God commanded Adam and Eve. What is that command? You are familiar with that command. He created Adam and Eve, and he created the Garden of Eden, and God commanded to Adam and Eve. What is that commandment? Genesis chapter 2, verses 16 and 17. Okay. There's a command not to eat. Right? There's a command not to eat a particular fruit. That's a kind of fasting. That's a command given to Adam to fast. So, return to Leviticus chapter 16, 29 to 30. There, God has given a command to the Israelites, the community of Israel community, to fast. Also, Zechariah, the prophet Zechariah, chapter 8, 19. God commanded to the people to observe fasting. So altogether it's a commandment, it's a command from God. We know Jesus reaffirmed this commandment in his public ministry, not only by saying, but doing it. He showed himself a way how to fast. So St. Matthew chapter 4, 1 through 11, we can see the fasting of Jesus there. One important thing we have to keep in mind is, Jesus did not say, if you fast, but said, when you fast. Matthew chapter 6, 16. Jesus said, when you fast. That's very important. He didn't say, if you fast. If you fast means that's an option. But Jesus said, when you fast. That means everybody is obliged to fast. That's why I said it's a command from God. So fasting is a divine institution, firstly. Jesus asked his disciples to use fasting as an important spiritual weapon to achieve spiritual victories. When we see Matthew chapter 17, 21, or Mark chapter 9, 29, we can see Jesus asked his disciple this spiritual weapon. Can you read St. Matthew chapter 17, 21? Anyone read? Yeah, English.
17:21.
Yeah. Or Mark chapter 9, 29. The same verse.
Matthew 17:21. നിങ്ങൾക്ക് കടുമുടിയോടെ വിശ്വാസമുണ്ടെങ്കിൽ ഈ മലയോട് ഇവിടെ നിന്ന് അങ്ങോട്ട് നീങ്ങുക എന്ന് പറഞ്ഞാലും നീങ്ങും. നിങ്ങൾക്കൊന്നും അസാധ്യമല്ല. എങ്കിലും പ്രാർത്ഥനയാലും ഉപവാസത്താലുമല്ലാതെ ഈ ജാതി നീങ്ങി പോകുന്നില്ല എന്ന് ഞാൻ സത്യമായിട്ട്
Can you read it in English? 17:21.
However, this kind does not go out except by prayer and fasting.
Except by prayer and fasting. So, Jesus commanded his disciples to observe prayer and fasting to win over Satan. So, this is an important spiritual weapon Jesus provided to his disciples in their spiritual journey. We all know, when we study the Old Testament, the patriarchs, as Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, or the Moses, the patriarchs, the prophets, the righteous, and just one of the Old Testament, observed the commandment of God strictly. We all know Moses fasted. How many days Moses fasted? 40 days. 40 days, not one time. Twice he fasted. Exodus chapter 24, 18 and 34, 28 is given like that. So Moses fasted 40 days. After that 40 days, what is the result of that fast?
He got commandments.
He got commandments. Not only he got commandments, then he can see the glory of God. So, he can see the glory of God. Not only that, he was glorified. So, after fasting 40 days at Mount Sinai, Moses got the laws from God to the people of Israel. He can see the glory of God from a distance, but at the same time he is glorified. He is divinized. Also we know that Elijah, he fasted 40 days. 1 Kings chapter 19:8 it is given. He fasted 40 days. Then we can know the kings of the Old Testament. Saul, he fasted. David, he fasted. Then the prophet Daniel, he fasted. Then Jonah, he advocated the peoples to fast. They fast, and the God has forgiven the wrath of the people of Nineveh. Then, if we look the books of the prophets, we can see the teachings about fasting. One of the famous teaching about fasting is given in Isaiah chapter 58:6. Isaiah chapter 58:6. Can anyone read that one? 6 onwards. Isaiah chapter 58:6 onwards. There it is given the true nature of fasting. English?
Chapter 58:6.
Yeah. 6 onwards.
I did not choose such a fast, says the Lord. Rather, loose every bond of wrongdoing, untie the knots of violent dealings, cancel the debts of the oppressed, and tear apart every unjust contract.
Okay. So we can see so many things after that. So that deals with the true nature of fasting. So this is about the Old Testament. We can see the personalities, the characters of Old Testament, and they fasted, they obeyed the commandment of God, and we can see the true nature of fast described by the prophets. When we see, coming to the New Testament, we can see Jesus fasted for 40 days. Then he commanded his disciples to fast. Then the disciples, after the resurrection of Jesus, they fasted. In Acts chapter 13:3. Can you read Acts chapter 13:3?
So after they had fasted and prayed, they placed their hands on them and sent them off.
Sent them out. So after they fasted and prayed, they laid their hands on, I think it is Barnabas. Laid their hands on Barnabas, and they sent Barnabas for the missionary journey. So, see, the early church, they give very importance to the act of fasting. Then in New Testament, in so many in the books of book of Paul, the epistle of Paul, we can see so many references about the fasting. So, coming to the point, fasting is therefore is a divine prescription and a heavenly providence practiced by our Lord itself and taught us to adhere to it. So first of all, as we think of fasting, this has to come in our mind. It's a divine institution. Just like other divine institutions, as we are practicing in the church, this is a divine institution. Divine institution means God told us to, or commanded us to do that. So it is not an option. That's why I told the word of Jesus that Jesus did not say if you fast, but said when you fast. It's Matthew chapter 6:16. When you fast, you have to do this and these things. So it is not an option. It's a mandatory thing. We are obliged to do that. So, secondly, this is the first thing. Secondly, when you think of fasting, in the Orthodox perspective, the Orthodox view, fasting is a preparation for a feast. It's a preparation towards a feast. So, fasting is associated with some feast. We know this fast, this Lenten season, this fast is associated with the greatest feast of the church, that is Easter. So, fast is connected with some feast. just as the children of Israel ate the bread of affliction in preparation for the Passover, so Christians prepare themselves for the celebration of the new Passover. So that is given the book of fast or Triodin. That's a book of fast for the Eastern Orthodox Church. It is just given like that. Just as the children of Israel ate the bread of affliction in preparation for the Passover, so Christians prepare themselves for the celebration of the new Passover. So this is fasting is a time of preparation for a feast. Secondly, so according to Saint Basil, one of the church father of the 4th century or 5th century, there is both physical and spiritual fast. In the physical fast, the body abstains from food and drink. The spiritual fast, the faster abstains from evil intention, words and deeds. So there is a two-way preparation we can see in fasting. There is an outward preparation and there is an inward preparation. All these preparations leads a Christian towards a feast. Since fasting has both material and spiritual liberating effects, the church has connected fasting with the major feast of the church. Why the church connected fast with the feast? Since fasting has a liberating effect in itself. Why I say liberating effects? If you abstain from food, there is a liberating factor in that. If you observe fast in an inward, what is called, there's an inward look, there's a liberating factor in that. Because of this liberating factor in the fasting, the church is connected fasting with the feasting, with the feast. So we all know we are having the Easter fast. The Easter fast was instituted by church for commemorating the death and resurrection of Jesus Christ. In the early church, as you know, the early church, the commemoration of this Easter, very early church, it was once in 33 years. It's once in 33 years. But afterwards, the church changed that things to annual commemoration, because 33 years, that much of time. So some Christians cannot attend that one because that much of time, that much of period. So first it was like that. Every 33 years, the church celebrated the resurrection or the passion or resurrection. But then the church changed that one. After the 1st century, the church changed its annually. So as you know, the Easter fast, we are fasting 40 days. This is a preparation. Firstly, it is a preparation for the major feast of the church, Easter. Secondly, this fast is a commemoration of the fast of Jesus Christ. Because Jesus fasted 40 days in the wilderness. So this fast is a commemoration of that fast. And in the life of the church, this fast is meant as a preparation for the catechumens. Catechumens means those who are going to be baptized. So in the early church, there were adult baptism. So those who are coming from other religions to Christianity, they have a period of preparation. They have a period of teaching. So the fasting days, these 40 days were utilized for that teaching and preparation. So we are having Easter fast. That's the main fast of the church. After that we have the Nativity fast, that is 25 days. The Nativity fast of the church begins in 4th century AD. Then it was 40 days, but the church edited that Lent or fast for 25 days after that. Then the fast of the Virgin Mary, that is 15 days, that is the Dormition fast, and we have Nineveh fast and the fast of the apostles. So, church, the fasting is associated with a feast. That's a second main things we have to keep in mind. So, every fast should end in a feast. We know feast means there's a celebration, there's a time of celebration. The fast should end in a celebration. That is the viewpoint of the church. The fast should end in a celebration. Fasting itself is a celebration, but its peak, it should end in a feast, that celebration. This is the second thing we have to keep in mind when we think of fasting. The fasting, as I mentioned, fasting is a divine institution. And secondly, the fasting in the church, the fasting is a preparatory time for a feast. Thirdly, in Orthodox concept or view, fasting should be accompanied by prayer, confession, meditation, and almsgiving. Fasting cannot stay as it is. It can't stay alone. If it stay alone, it doesn't have any meaning in Orthodox Church. So, in Orthodox Church, according to the Church, fasting should be accompanied by prayer, confession, then meditation and almsgiving. True fasting is to be converted in heart and will, and it is to return to God, to come home like the prodigal. Fasting is not an end in itself. You know, in St. Matthew chapter 17:21, Jesus said, through fasting and prayer. Jesus combined this fasting and prayer as a spiritual weapon. So, not only fasting and prayer, but confession is very important things. Because we are doing fasting, the inward meaning of fasting is penance. So, the confession is very important when we fast. That's why the church encouraged its members to do confession in the Great Lent time. Also, it should be accompanied by meditation. If you are just fasting, if you are just abstaining some foods, and we are not doing any prayer, or we are not doing any meditation, or if you are doing any confession, you are still carrying your burdens, it's a kind of burden. We have to think, why, when we are coming to the church and we are celebrating a feast, so for example called Easter, we are celebrating Easter. Sometimes we may not get a feelings, or we may not get a good feelings out of that service. Why so? So if you want to get a good, I'm not going to call feeling, but a good experience out of that service, we have to be prepared, or we have to be prepared, as I said, the preparation is very important. If you come to the church without any preparation, for example, for Holy Kurbana or any other sacrament, we may feel boring. But if we come to the church with utmost preparation, we can feel the essence of that service. We can feel the essence or the experience from that. We get that experience from that, what is called service. So, fasting should be accompanied by prayer, confession, meditation, and almsgiving. According to according to Shepherd of Hermas, that's a second century book. It is given like that: the money saved through fasting is to be given to the widow, orphans, and poor. The money saved through fasting is to be given to the widow, orphans, and poor. So the church encouraged its members for almsgiving. Not only money. When we think of almsgiving, we may think of just giving some money to some charitable institution, or just giving some money to the poor or some needy. No, the church urges its members, or advocates its members, not only money, to give a part of ourselves, give a part of our life, to share a part of our life, that means our time, to others. Almsgiving has a broader meaning like that. So fasting should be accompanied by prayer, then this meditation, and the confession and almsgiving. That's why the church exhorts its members to do 5 things in the Great Lent or Lenten season. That is this scriptural reading, fasting, then prayer, more prayer, then contemplation or meditation, and almsgiving. This is the third thing. Fasting should not stay alone. It should be accompanied by prayer. I'm fasting and I'm not reciting any prayers. I'm not praying, or I'm not going to the church for confession, or I'm just not giving any almsgiving. I'm not giving anything to the poor. So that's a meaningless thing. So fasting should create a compassionate heart in us. Should create a merciful heart in us. Then only it should be meaningful. The 4 things I just want to give is, according to the Orthodox Christians, or the Orthodox view, fasting is for liberation, or the spiritual healing. The fasting we do for the liberation, the total liberation of the human person, or it is for the spiritual healing of human persons. According to St John Chrysostom, a church father, 4th century, fast should be abstinence not only from food but from sins. He said, fast should be abstinence not only from food but from sins, kept not only by mouth alone, but also by the eye, by the ear, the feet, the hands, and the members of the body. So, fast should be not through the only by mouth, not abstinence from eating, but we should fast by our senses, 5 senses. Should be through our eyes. We can fast through our eyes. We can fast by our ear. And we can fast by our hands. So, St. John Chrysostom, according to St. John Chrysostom, the fasting should not limit the abstinence of food. It should grow from that. So, one of the main focus, or one of the main aim of the Christian fasting is the liberation of the total personality, or the transfiguration of the total personality to the divine light. That is one of the focus of the fasting. The liberation from spiritual struggles. According to the fathers, the desert fathers, if a person wants to attain perfection, he has to go through all the spiritual struggles, and he has to overcome all the spiritual struggles. According to the fathers, They just categorized eight categories of spiritual struggles. A man should pass through these 8 struggles, spiritual struggles, and they are to overcome these 8 struggles. The first struggle that the desert fathers they are given is the gluttony. We all know gluttony is associated with the food. So this is the first step. This is the first step of the spiritual growth. That's why fasting is more associated with food. The second thing is the carnal lust. It is associated with the sexuality or sex. The first step is the food, then it is the carnal lust. Then the third step is the love of money or love of possession. The fourth step is the anger. The fifth one is the sorrow. The sixth one is the despondency or the loneliness that a person feels. The seventh one is the vain glory, and the eighth one is the pride. If a person can overcome all these struggles, he can attain, Greek there is a word called apathia. Apathia means a total liberation. If a person can win over all these 8 spiritual struggles, he can attain the state of apathia or the state of liberation. So we can see the first step is the food. If we can't overcome the struggles by the food, how can we overcome all other 7 steps? The first step is the food struggle. The second one is the struggle associated with the sex. The third one is the struggle associated with the money. Then associated with the anger, that's emotional feelings of the person. Then also the sorrow, that's also an emotional feeling of the person. Then despondency, if a person feels a loneliness in his heart or mind, that's a spiritual struggle. Then there's vain glory. Then after that is the pride. The pride is the 8th steps. If we can win over the pride, we can attain the liberation according to the spiritual fathers. But it is not an easy task. We know we can what's our we know all these things. How can we overcome these things? Even if we can't overcome the first step. Even Adam and Eve, they can't overcome the first step. That's why they fell and that affected the human beings. See, this is the things. If anybody asked us, what is your favorite food? So, everybody has a favorite food. Everybody will have a favorite food. So, some of them, it may be kani, or some of it may be some other things, some pasta or pizza, or some other. Everybody has a favorite food. If anybody has a favorite food means, he is more or less somewhat addicted with that food. So, fasting means just to master over the things which is mastering over us. Whatever material things master over us. So, the fasting is the time to win over that things. So, that's why the Orthodox Church advocate persons. You can fast in all the things. They refer persons to a spiritual father. A spiritual father can decide in what matters or what are the things he has to fast. Somebody doesn't have a problem with the food. So a spiritual father, he can decide in what are the things he has to take into consideration. So fasting is a time to master over the things which master us. We know God created human beings, and He said, "Master over all things." This is the commandment of God. He created human beings, and He said, "Master over all things." So human persons, every human person has the potentiality to master over all things. But unfortunately, we know the material possession or material things, they are mastering over us. So the fasting is a time to attain the, we can say in a word, lost paradise. To attain the lost paradise. The paradise form of life. The kingdom model of life. So this is a time for liberation. Liberation from all the things, material things that master over us. So these are some of the things. When we think of fasting, these are some of the things comes into our minds. The first thing that comes into our minds is fasting is a divine institution. The second thing, fasting should be associated with a feast. The third thing, fasting should be accompanied by prayer, confession, meditation, and almsgiving. And the fourth thing is, fasting is for liberation of all the human personality, or the spiritual healing of the personality. So, with this, I am going over to the next session of this lecture. That is, there are some of the contemporary trends and misconceptions on fasting. What are some of the trends and misconceptions on fasting? So I can point out very quickly some of the misconceptions, and we'll have some discussions over that. If you have any questions or concerns or any clarifications or any suggestions, we can discuss it after this presentation. So, what are some of the trends on fasting, or some of the misconceptions of fasting? So, we can see there is a tendency to emphasize the outward and neglect the inward meaning of fasting. So, some of the churches and some of us Christians giving overemphasis to the outward expression of fasting. But at the meantime, there is a chance to neglect the inward meaning of the fasting. That's why this is not only our problem, but we can see in Isaiah chapter 58, Isaiah that exhorted the people that this is not a fast. This is we are doing this much of things, but this is not the right fasting. You have to see the inward meaning. Jesus also in his public ministry told the people regarding the fasting. This is not the right way. You have to think of this way. That is, we have to give equal consideration to the outward expression of the fasting, that the set rules of the church. We have to be obedient, and we have to observe the set rules of the church, as well as we have to see the inward meaning implied in that set of rules. That is, a moderate position is meaningful. But some of the traditional churches, they just reduced these outward rules as just symbolic. That's what happened. I'm I'm not judging the Roman Catholic Church, but that's happened in the Roman Catholic Church. This is just reduced this outward expression of the fasting, just merely symbolic. Also, there is another trend is, some of the peoples may say, traditional rules are no longer possible today. So these rules are set some 16th century or 18th century before, and how can it be applied today? So the world has changed a lot. How can that rules be applied today? So for fasting, if we want to attain a spiritual growth, or if you want to attain a spiritual perfection, we have to pay. We have to sacrifice some element. Without sacrifice, without paying anything, we can't reach the spiritual maturity. That's why Jesus said the way to heaven is very narrow. The way to the kingdom of God is narrow. So we have to give up something. We have to sacrifice something. So, some of the trends about fasting. Some of the misconception about the fasting is, some may say, Lenten fast is intended only for monks and nuns, and they are no longer applicable for the Christians, ordinary Christians. They are no longer applicable. But the church made set of rules, and when the church made set of rules, the intention is all the faithful of the church should observe this Lent, not only the nuns and monks. So some of the misconception is some of the churches and persons, they try to invent special rules for themselves. They say this is not suitable for me, so I can invent some other model of or the model of fasting, and I can adopt it in my life. That's why so the kids, my God, I can give up some candy in this, or I can give them some candies, and I can give some. That's good. Giving up something, that's good. But primarily we have to obey the rules set by the church, because obedience is the best way to attain spiritual maturity. Without obedience to the church, we know church is the body of Christ. So the obedience to the church is the primary step. So even if you want to observe some fast other than the set rules of the church teaches its faithful to approach to a spiritual father. You go to a spiritual father and discuss with the spiritual father, what are the things I'm going to give up? So if we are sick, we are going to, if we are sick, we just go to a doctor, and doctor prescribes the medicine, not we prescribe the medicines. So the doctor prescribes the medicine for that sickness. Just like that, if we want to do certain types of fast other than the set rules of the church, surely we have to go to a spiritual father and get advice from the spiritual father. This is the teaching of the church. So, set the special rules is good, but it should be in consultation with the spiritual father. So some people are observing media fast. That's good. So media fast is good. So I'm not watching the TV for 50 days. So I'm not using the internet for 50 days. These are good. Giving up certain things are good. But it should be in consultation with the spiritual father. That's the teaching of the church. ഏതിനോടാണ് ആസക്തി അതിനെയാണ് ഉപേക്ഷിക്കേണ്ടതെന്ന് പറയും. ഏതിനോട് ആസക്തി അതിനെ ഉപേക്ഷിക്കണം. We have to give up the things which are controlling us. What are the things controlling us in our spiritual journey? We have to give up that things, but in consultation with the spiritual father. That's why the church advocates its members to go to a confession during the fast time or Lenten season. So consult with the spiritual father and list out what are the things I'm going to give up in this Lenten season. Deuteronomy 32:7, it is given that ask your father, he will tell you. Ask your father, he will tell you. What are the things good for your spiritual journey, spiritual health, and what are the things is harm for your spiritual health. Then another thing is, by observing the fasting, it's not a gloomy thing. Observing fasting is not a gloomy thing. It's a joyful thing. It should be a joyful thing. So, according to the church fathers, they are giving us a joy-creating. They term their fasting as a joy-creating sorrow. It's a joy-creating sorrow. It's a sorrowful thing. It needs sacrifice, but it's a joy-creating sorrow. So, fast is not a burden. Don't think fasting is a burden, but it's a gift of God's grace. Think the fasting is a gift of God. If you think it's as a burden, so we'll be bored. We can't observe that. It's a gift from God to our purification and spiritual maturity. We think in that way, it should be a joyful thing for us. Also, another misconception is that Lenten abstinence does not imply a rejection of God's creation. So, someone may think, food, then all other these material things, these are all God's creation. Why can't we abstaining from these things? It's God's creation. God's created all these things and see these are good. Then why you are segregating some things as what is called unclean and some are good? Why are we just give up something? And so God's creation is good. So the question is there. Then why are you segregating some things? So according to the church fathers, nothing is unclean. So you know in the Bible it is given nothing is unclean. In Romans chapter 14 is given nothing is unclean. Everything is good. All that God made is very good. In Genesis 1:31 it is given that all the things that God made is good. You know, fasting is not to deny this intrinsic goodness. It is not to deny that goodness that God provides with these material things. But fasting is to reaffirm it. Fasting is not to deny that intrinsic goodness, but to reaffirm it. Reaffirm the goodness in that. You know, at the Messianic kingdom, no need of self-denial or fasting. As living in a foreign world, we need to fast. To kill the flesh, to acquire the body, to restore the true freedom of the children of God. We need fasting only in this fallen world. The Messianic kingdom, we don't need fasting. So, we need fasting in this fallen world. This is to make things good. So, our attitude towards things should change. Things are good. Every material things are good because all things are created by God. But our attitude towards that things should change in that fasting season. not to make the act of eating shameful, to make our eating spiritual, sacramental, and Eucharistic. We know the act of eating is not shameful. But make or reaffirm it as a sacramental. If we eat food, we have to think in a sacramental way. That means think that this is good. And the attitude towards that food, we have to take that food with thankful to God. So the attitude towards the material things should change during the fast period or Lenten season. So we know some of the church advocate it's faithful for marital fasting. Marital fasting means so husband and wife, they are to be just like brothers and sisters at the time of fasting. So one may think why the church is giving us such a hard rule for the husband and wife. Also, one may think if the church is teaching like that, is the marital relation is impure. God blessed the marriage. God is blessing the marriage. Why the church is teaching like that? So, the church doesn't have any intention that marital relation is impure. But in order to make the marital relation more spiritual, in order to take out all the point of lust from the marital relation, the church advocates its members to do marital fasting. So, when we think of fasting or when we think of giving up something, don't think these things are impure or these things are purely satanic or it is evil. We are giving up these things in order to transform or in order to what is called reproduce its goodness, the intrinsic goodness in that thing. That's why we are giving up certain things. Regarding the food, in Indian tradition, so according to the Bhagavad Gita, there's a scripture of the Sanatana Dharma Hindus. They categorize material things in three classes, material things. And the first class they call Tejas, then Rajas, and Tamam. Three things. The Tejas is a good thing, good. Then Rajas is a kind of good, and Tamas is a bad thing. The food categories, the Indian tradition categorizes food into these categories. There are Tejas foods are there. They're called the vegetarian foods are these Tejas foods. Then this called meat and all stuffs. That that is called the Tamo goods. That's why the sannyasis or the monks of the Indian tradition, they won't take any meat because that produces inertia in peoples. So the food that is easily digestible and that gives nutrition, that are the Rajas foods. The Rajas foods will produce just character means the character of light to persons. The tamo foods. Tamo food means the bad foods that will produce these things. As you know, one thing, why we are the church teaches to take this what is called vegetarian foods during the fast and others. You see in the Bible, the Genesis, as you look Genesis, in the first page of Genesis, first chapter of Genesis, God created all these things, and I think it's in verse 1, Genesis chapter 1. It's 30, yeah. Genesis chapter 1:30. Can you read it in English?
And to all the beasts of the earth and all the birds of the air and all the creatures that move on the ground, everything that has breath of life in it, I give every green plant for food.
Yeah, green plant for food. So, can you read verse 29?
Then God said, I give you every seed-bearing plant on the face of the whole earth, and every tree that has fruit with seed in it. They will be yours for food.
Yeah, the food. And so this is the state before the fall. So before the fall, so what is the food that God provided to the peoples? What kind of food? It's the food, that is the vegetarian food. So after you see in Genesis chapter 9, verses 3. There's a different version there. After the flood, there's a different version. Chapter 9, verse 3.
Every moving thing that liveth shall be meat for you, even as the green herb have I given you always.
Once again.
Every moving thing that liveth shall be meat for you.
Yeah, every moving thing shall be meat for you. So, when God created, before fall, the food was vegetarian. And after this flood, the food was changed to the non-vegetarian. Some non-vegetarian, some comes to our world only after the flood. So one of the our aim, the fasting, our aim is to return back to the paradise or the life before the fall. We are just trying to regain the life before the fall. If we want to, it's called recreate, or we want to go back to that life, we have to eat vegetarian food at least for 40 days. At least for 40 days we have to eat. Then we have to celebrate the feast. This is a kind of training, The fasting is not a part of piety. It's a spiritual discipline. It's a spiritual discipline. To discipline our body and our soul. Our body, the soul, and spirit. According to the fathers, human beings are created with body, soul, and spirit. They are interrelated. Anything affects the body, that will affect our soul and spirit. Just like that, anything affects our spirit, that will affect our body. So, why the church teaches us to observe fast as a church? We can observe fast personally. Why the church asks us to observe fast as a church? So, church is a body of Christ. Church is body of Christ. So, every member of that body is important one. If few of the members are observing and few are not observing, that means that affects the whole body, because we are connected. That's why church teaches or asks its members to observe Lent as a collective body. So we have to keep that in mind. So let me conclude this session with a verse from Romans chapter 8, 19 through 22. Can you read Romans chapter 8, 19, 22?
For all creation is waiting eagerly for the future day when God will reveal whose children really are. Against its will, everything on earth is subjected to God's curse. And all creation anticipates the day when it will join God's children in glorious freedom from death and decay. For we know that all creation has been groaning as in the pains of childbirth right up to the present time.
So all creations are eagerly waiting for the glorification. Glorification. So the creation is waiting for its glorification. So its liberation. So God is also waiting for the liberation or the glorification of human beings. So God commanded this practice, or given this practice to human beings in order for their liberation. Liberation from the bondage of all oppressive forces, all evil forces that oppress human beings and human beings. So fasting is primarily is an effort against the will of Satan, and it is to attain the lost, is called the freedom of the human beings. So in order to do the will of God, every human person should obey or observe the commandments of God. Ascetic self-discipline then signifies a rejection of the world only in so far it is corrupted by the fall of the body, only in so far as it is dominated by sinful passion. Lust exclude love, no longer governed by selfish desire, but see the world, the eyes of Adam in paradise. Self-denial should lead to self-affirmation. This is the thing, and this is the main point about fasting. Self-denial should lead to self-affirmation. Any denial should lead to the affirmation. Say negation. We have to give up something, means that's negation. That leads to the affirmation. So may God bless you to observe a meaningful fast in this Lenten period. Thank you for giving this opportunity to share a few thoughts about this fasting and about the feast of this church. So if you have any questions, you can ask, so I can discuss and I can answer. Thank you.
Can you describe more about our Orthodox way of fasting? I mean, how we observe fasting?
We observe fasting.
Yeah.
Okay. So Orthodox way of fasting. So primarily
Is it like a time frame? Is there or?
Yeah, there's a time frame. So normally fasting starts with the we can Sabaro, there's a Sudaro, it's a midnight prayer. Before that we pray Sudaro. Then normally it's usually it is 3 o'clock to 3 o'clock, the third hour prayer. So I think there's a time of to come 12 hours, more than 12 hours. So there's a time frame for that.
So from the night to
the
day, 3 o'clock.
day, the noon time. Generally it's a noon time. Night to the noon time. That's a general time of fasting. Then fasting, then to avoid the meat, then dairy products, then egg, then fish with the backbones, and the sea. Some of the fishes are allowed it, and some of the days, and you can see that's from the Jewish observance from the book of Leviticus. They classified which are the foods they may eat and other stuff. So some of these things. Then the fasting should be. This is the important one. That is giving up some foods and these things. Giving up of then fasting should be accompanied by this prayer. That's very important one. Should be accompanied by prayer. The church teaches that in fasting, the Lenten time, a faithful should fast. We are having 7 hours of prayer, 7 offices of prayers. That faithful should pray the 7 offices of prayer. Then after that prayer, had to meditate on the word of God. After that, had to meditate on the word of God. Then every week it advocates members to confess and take the Holy Communion. So some of the practices in our church.
You told that one Wednesday and.
Yeah, we are having Wednesday and Friday fast.
Is it just for the fasting time or is it for?
It's a fasting time. It's a fasting time from the early period. It is the fasting time. Why we fast Wednesday and Friday? Why we fast Wednesday and Friday? It's a practice from the early church. The early church is a practice from the first century onwards. The church fast from the Wednesday and Friday. So the Wednesday, according to the church fathers, Wednesday Jesus was arrested, and Friday he was crucified. So we observe Wednesday and Friday. Some of the interesting thing is, I think Jews observe Monday and Thursday as their fasting days. So the Christian religion or the Christianity, they don't want to observe the same day as the Jews observe. That's Monday and Thursday. Also, the interesting thing is, we know the Jews the sacred day is Saturday, but the Christians, they observe Sunday as the sacred day. So in the first century, it's a kind of like that. Also, this is the important thing. Jesus was betrayed, or Jesus was arrested, and Jesus was crucified. So from the early time, the church observed Wednesday and Friday as the fasting days with what is called the ascetical fast. This is called ascetical fast. There's fasting, giving up the food for this much of time, this much of hour.
Are we fasting on Sunday?
Fasting in the church, Sunday we don't advocate for, because Sunday is a feast day. Feast day, in all the feast days, church won't teach, church won't advocate the fasting. Fasting is, that's why I just pointed out, fasting is a preparation to the feast. So this is just a kind of preparation to the feast. So feast days you won't fast.
But the 15 days we fast Monday or Sunday also.
50 days we won't fast Sunday. Sunday is excluded from that. Saturday and Sunday is excluded from that fasting. Monday through Friday. Normally Monday through Friday we can fast, and Saturday and Sunday is kind of it is fasting ഉൾവായിട്ടുണ്ട്. അതായത് അന്ന് സാറ്റർഡേ ഒക്കെ എന്തെങ്കിലും won't be kneel down or you won't be fast for the time of Holy Communion, because that's a joy of the children of God. So we don't need the fasting or penance or any other things. So we don't need preparation. We are just participating and we are just enjoying that feast.
So wait, does that apply to all the festival or the fasting periods? Meaning like the Great Lent, like the Assumption Fast, the Apostles' Fast, like the Sunday we don't, because of Kurbana we don't.
We don't fast.
No.
Sunday we don't fast.
When you say fasting, that's different than abstaining from meats and all that, right? Fasting means
Yeah,
something.
fasting is kind of same. We have two words, fasting and abstinence. We have abstinence and fasting. Abstinence means abstain from certain food. Fasting means we don't take any food. It's absolute, absolute giving up of food. So fasting and abstinence is not different. It's one thing, but we just integrate these things in our fasting. These two things. So normally in the Great Lent period, we won't take any. We won't abstain from meat and dairy products and all the things. But we observe fasting, the ascetic fasting, only on Monday through Friday. Monday through Friday.
The Wednesday and Friday
Yeah.
is not for the fasting time, right? Or are we observing the fasting every week? No, right?
Yeah, we are observing Wednesday and throughout the year.
Throughout the year.
Throughout the year, we are fasting this Wednesday and Friday. But some of the days are that means the day from the nativity, that is December 25th to the January 6th. That days, that 1 week, we would encourage fasting Wednesdays and Friday. Also from the Easter to the Pentecost. That 50 days, that 40 days from the Ascension, we just encourage fasting. So normally that day, the Wednesdays and Fridays are fast days. So one thing is, in the fast days, you won't encourage conducting marriages and all this stuff. Because in the Lent season also, the church won't encourage its members for this marriage or any other things. Because there's a preparation and there's a preparatory time.
You mentioned about 40-day period. Because in Bible we throughout say like everyone is fasting for 40 days for Jesus. Most of them does for that 40 days. Is there any particular reason for that?
There may be a reason, because Moses fasted 40 days, then Elijah 40 days, Jesus Christ 40 days, and then we can see Daniel fasted 40 days, more than 40 days. So there's a significance of 40. How much are you? What is the significance of that 40? There is some significance. There may be some significance, or the biblical writers give the significance of കൊടുത്താണ് എനിക്ക് ഞാൻ ഇതിനെക്കുറിച്ച് പഠിച്ചിട്ടില്ല. പറഞ്ഞേക്കാം.
But during this Great Lent for us, it's 50 days, right? We have an extra.
Yeah, Great Lent is Great Lent is 40 days, but with that Great Lent 40 days, we just add 1 week. That's the Passion Week. Just add that 1 week, and that's a Great Lent is 40 days. And Great Lent is preparation for the Passion Week. See, the Passion Week, the Great Lent is the preparation for the Passion Week. So that is 40 days preparation for this crucifixion and the resurrection of Jesus Christ. That's a kind of preparatory day.
During the Passion Week, are we doing anything specific, like the Passion Week in particular?
Passion Week, our church teaches to observe strict fasting. For the Greek Orthodox Church or the Eastern Orthodox Church, when they take after the dinner of Thursday night, they won't take any food till the Pascha. Pascha means Easter. That 3 days they will observe a strict fast. Not all the peoples, few. They will observe the strict fast from the Thursday evening through Sunday. They won't take anything. But in our church, we teaches, our church teaches the members to observe fasting, strict fasting in that 1 week. 1 week.
With regards to fasting, I mean, like many religions, many churches, they fast in different ways.
Yeah.
Like some churches, like our church, you explain how our church does it. Some churches don't eat anything throughout the day. Some churches don't eat anything for numerous days, right? And these are different religions as well.
Yeah.
I don't want to ask which is the right way, which is the wrong way. Because, I mean, you've already stated that our church bases we do it based off the guidelines of our church.
Yeah.
So I guess I'm more curious to what does our church base our guidelines off? Like where do we get our guidelines from?
Guidelines from. So we know that Bible did not teach anything. Bible teaches to fast, okay? Fast, but it doesn't set any rules to fast. But when there is a fasting days in that Jesus time, but it set any rule. But it gives authority to the church. Jesus gives authority to the church to set rules for its members. That's why Jesus gives that authority to the church. This is the church fathers. They sit down and then they, with the help of the Holy Spirit, they decided these things are applicable or these things are good for the church. Then they set certain rules. What is called the ecumenical synods, ecumenical synods. They set their rules for the fasting of the church. But there are if we want to fast in this manner, we have to just approach our spiritual father and tell, I can't confine in this set of rules. I want some other things. So, in consultation with the spiritual father, you can border your way of fasting, or you can shorten your way of fasting. The church gives that freedom to its members. So, is it clear?
The sick peoples, I mean, are they fasting at the?
No, the church gives the sick peoples, the pregnant women, also the women in their
Small kids.
period, and kids, small kids.
Up to what?
Kids are up to the age of 8 in Greek church, in the Roman Catholic Church, at the age of 8. And in Greek church, at the age of 5 or 6, it gives them. Our church is kids.
What about Kurbana? Whether they need to fast to have Kurbana?
Kurbana, in our church, we need to fast at least one day midnight to the time of Kurbana.
Even
At least 6 hours. That's the minimum prescription. 6 hour fasting is needed for taking the Holy Kurbana. So 6 hours, that is the minimum period. For Roman Catholic Church, it is only 1 hour. It's 1 hour. So Greek Church is the same as ours.
Is there any expressions for the kids? Like
Kids?
Yeah, are they fasting too? Or?
Yeah, they want to fast. Every member has to fast. Every member who is baptized in the church has to fast the same. They have to observe the same.
I mean, the newborn
We can
kids.
give some assumption
Yeah.
for the breastfeeding infants.
Yeah, infants we can give
Yeah.
some
I
example.
don't care much about it.
The fasting rules of the Orthodox, especially the Eastern Orthodox Church, that is kind of similar with us. It's very interesting. Very, very interesting. So, how much they can eat. They don't have any regulations for that. They can eat as much as they want. Then there are some of the the Eastern Orthodox Church allows wine and all the stuff for the some days. But the Syrian churches won't allow wines. The church has always exempted small children, the sick, the very old, the pregnant, and the nursing mothers from strict fasting. But people in these groups should not seriously restrict the amount that they eat. No harm will come from doing without some foods on 2 days out of the week. Simply eat enough of the permitted foods. exceptions to the fast based on medical necessity are always allowed. The medical necessity are always allowed.
Is our church still following the tradition of no fish, no milk?
Yeah.
Or is it, because I've heard people say that now it's allowed.
So, see, the Orthodox Church, this is the peculiarity of the Orthodox Church. The Orthodox churches, they strictly follow the rules and regulations and the pattern of the fasting that the early church set for them. But some of the churches, for example, our Syrian churches, for example, we know that patriarchal faction, that is Jacobite Church. They, I think in 1946 there is a synod of Homs. They, what is called, for them this Great Lent is only the 2 weeks. Great Lent is only 2 weeks for them. Then they abridge that the period of Lent. For them the Apostle Lent, for us Apostle Lent is 13 days. For them it is 3 days. Also for just like the Nativity Lent, the Lent before the Christmas is, for them it is 5 days. For us it is 25 days. We didn't change that period. We just, but I think the saddest thing is nobody is observing that. Saddest thing. Some of them, but most of our people, I think most of the people are observing this Great Lent, a part of the Great Lent, not just like a strict rule, but they are observing a kind of Lent in this Great Lent. But, so other Lents, some of the people are observing, some are not observing.
I'm going to go back to the guidelines real quick. You said that the authority is given to the church as far as choosing the guidelines that we use to observe fasting. As long as we consult the spiritual father. If I didn't want to give up meat or food or anything, I just need to get the approval of a spiritual father.
Yeah.
Is what you're saying.
So the thing is, so we want to give for the spiritual growth. For example, we are just consulting a doctor for such a for a particular disease. We are just approaching a doctor. So doctor asking something and seeing the doctor saying, you have to take this one, you have to take this one, you have to don't take this one. If the doctor prescribed like this, we have to obey that. That's the things. So the doctor knows what's good for your health. Just like that, a spiritual father should know what is good for the members of the church. That's the thing. But a consistency is needed. So if you are going to one priest for confession one time, and if you are going to for another priest for another confession, if you are going for another priest for another confession, so that consistency is needed for a healthy and wealthy spiritual growth. So if you are going a spiritual father and you are telling your some of your spiritual struggles, so that father, he can determine your spiritual growth from that. So every time you are going to the spiritual father, not once in a year, but if you have a need, you can go at any time to a spiritual father. For us, the priest, our duty time is 24 hours. If a member calls in the midnight and if a member asks, I want to confess, so we don't want to to say no, this is midnight. So you can go at any time to a spiritual father and you can tell, you have to open up your problems or crises or spiritual struggles. You have to open up. Then the spiritual father, he knows and he can prescribe, this is needed, this is needed, this is needed. So some of the again about the meat. So the church strongly recommend its members to give up meat in fasting period or Lenten period. final thing. So it's a final goal. Getting things means we can't ask. It's a gift of God. So Moses, after 40 days, his face is shining, or is glorified. That is the gift of God. That's the gift of God. That's the gift of God. So normally, and the church discourages